Today we're going to read Magic Tree House, Mummies in the Morning. Chapter 1, Meow. It's still here, said Jack. It looks empty, said Annie. Jack and his 7-year-old sister gazed up at a very tall oak tree. At the top of the tree was a tree house. Late morning sunlight lit the woods. It was almost time for lunch. Shh, said Jack. What was that noise? What noise? I heard a noise, Jack said. He looked around. It sounded like someone coughing. I didn't hear anything, said Annie. Come on, let's go up. She grabbed a rope ladder and started climbing. Jack tiptoed over to a clump of bushes. He pushed aside a small branch. Hello, he said. Anybody there? There was no answer. Jack, come on, Annie called down. The treehouse looked as the same it did yesterday. Jack still felt that someone was nearby. Could it be the person who put all the books in the treehouse? Jack! Called Annie. Jack gazed over at the top of the bushes. Was the mysterious M person watching him now? Maybe M wanted the gold medallion back, the one Jack found on their dinosaur adventure. Maybe M wanted the letter bookmark back, the one from the castle book. There was an M on the medallion and an M on the bookmark. But what did M stand for? Tomorrow I'll bring everything back, Jack said loudly. A breeze swept through the woods. The leaves rattled. Come on, called Annie. Jack went back to the big oak tree. He grabbed the rope ladder and climbed up. When he reached the top, he crawled through a hole in the wooden floor. He tossed down his backpack and pushed his glasses into place. Which book is it going to be today? Asked Annie. She was looking around the books scattered around the treehouse. Annie picked up the book about castles. Just yesterday, the castle book had taken Jack and Annie back to the time of knights. Hey, this isn't wet anymore, she said. She handed the book to Jack. You're right, said Jack, amazed. The book had gotten soaked in a castle moat, but today it looked fine. Jack slightly thanked the mysterious knight who had rescued them. Watch out, warned Annie. She waved the dinosaur book in Jack's face. Put that away, Jack said nervously. The day before yesterday, the dinosaur book had taken them to the time of dinosaurs. Jack slightly thanked the pteranodon who had saved him from a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Annie had put the dinosaur book Jack with the other books. Then she gasped. Wow, she whispered. Look at this. She held up the book about ancient Egypt. Jack caught his breath. He took the book from her. A green silk bookmark was sticking out from between the pages. Jack turned to the page with the bookmark. There was a picture of a pyramid. Going toward the pyramid was a long parade. 4 huge cows with horns were pulling a sled. On the sled was a long gold box. Many magicians were walking behind the sled. At the end of the parade was a sleek-backed cat. Let's go there, whispered Annie. Now. Wait, said Jack. He wanted to study the book a bit more. Pyramids, Jack, said Annie. You love pyramids. It was true. Pyramids were high on Jack's list of favorite things. After knights and dinosaurs. Plant-eating dinosaurs, that is. He didn't have to worry about being eaten by a pyramid. Okay, he said, but hold the Pennsylvania book in case we want to come right back here. Annie found the book with a picture of their hometown in it, Frog Creek, Pennsylvania. Jack pointed to the pyramid picture in the Egypt book. He cleared his throat and said, I wish we could go to this place. Meow. What was that? Jack looked out the treehouse window. A black cat was sitting on the branch right outside the window. The cat was staring at Jack and Annie. It was the strangest cat Jack had ever seen. It was very sleek and dark with bright yellow eyes and a wide gold collar. It's a cat in the Egypt book, whispered Annie. The wind started to blow. The leaves started to shake. Here we go, cried Annie. The wind was louder. The leaves shook harder. Jack closed his eyes as the treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. Chapter 2. Aw, man, mummies! Meow. Jack and Annie looked down the window. The treehouse was perched on the top of the palm tree. The tree stood about 1,000 other palm trees. They were in a patch of green surrounded by a desert. Meow. Jack and Annie looked down. The black cat was sitting at the bottom of the tree. The cat's yellow eyes were staring up at Jack and Annie. Hi! Annie shouted. Shh! said Jack. Someone might hear you. In the middle of the desert, said Annie. The black cat stood up and began walking around the tree. Come back! Annie called. She leaned over the window to see where the cat was going. Oh, wow, she said. Look, Jack. Jack leaned forward and looked down. The cat was running away from the palm trees toward a giant pyramid in the desert. A parade was going in the pyramid. It looked exactly like the parade in the Egypt book. It's the picture in the book, said Jack. What are those people doing? Asked Annie. Jack looked down at the Egypt book. He read the words under the picture. When a royal person died, a grand funeral procession took place. Family, servants, and other mourners followed the coffin. The coffin was called a sarcophagus. It was pulled on a sled by 4 oxen. It's an Egyptian funeral, said Jack. The box is called a forget it. He looked out the window again. The oxen, the sled, the Egyptian, and the black cat was all moving in a slow, dreamy way. I'd better make some notes about this, said Jack. Jack liked to make notes. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a notebook. Jack wrote, Coffin called sarcophagus. We'd better hurry, said Jack, if we want to see the mummy. Annie started down the rope ladder. Jack looked up from his notebook. Mummy? He said. There's probably a mummy in that gold box. Annie called up. We're in ancient Egypt, remember? Jack loved mummies. He put down his pencil. Goodbye, Jack! called Annie. Wait! Annie called. Mummies! Annie shouted. Oh, man, said Jack. Mummies! Jack shoved his notebook and the Egypt book into his pack. Then he started down the ladder. When Jack got to the ground, he and Annie took off across the yard. As they ran, a strange thing happened. The closer they got to the parade, it was harder to see it. Then suddenly, it was gone. The strange parade has vanished, but the great stone pyramid was still there, towering above them. Panting, Jack looked around. What happened? Where were the people, the oxen, the gold box, the cat? They're gone, said Annie. Where did they go? Said Jack. Maybe there were ghosts, said Annie. Don't be silly. There's no such thing as ghosts, said Jack. It must have been a mirage. A what? Mirage. It happens in the desert all the time, said Jack. It looks like something's there, but it turns out to be the sunlight reflecting through heat. How could sunlight look like people, a mummy box, and a bunch of cows? Said Annie. Jack frowned. Ghosts, she said. No way, said Jack. Look. Annie pointed to the pyramid. Near the base was the sleek black cat. He was standing alone. He was staring at Jack and Annie. He's no mirage, said Annie. The cat started to slink away. He walked along the side of the pyramid and slid around the corner. Where's he going? Said Jack. Let's find out, said Annie. They dashed around the corner just in time to see the cat disappear through a hole in the pyramid wall. Chapter 3. It's alive! Where did he go? Said Jack. He and Annie peeked through the hole in the wall. They saw a long hallway. Burning torches lit the walls. Dark shadows loomed. Let's go in, said Annie. Wait, said Jack. He pulled out the Egyptian book and turned to the section on pyramids. He read out the caption aloud. Pyramids were sometimes called the houses of the dead. They were nearly all solid stone, except for the burial chambers deep inside. Wow, let's go there, to the burial chambers, said Annie. I bet a mummy's there. Jack took a deep breath. Then he stepped out of the hot, bright sunlight into the cool, dark pyramid. The hallway was silent. Floor, ceiling, walls, everything was stone. The floor slanted up from where they stood. We have to go farther inside, said Annie. Right, said Jack, but stay close behind me. Don't talk, don't. Go, just go, said Annie. She gave him a little push. Jack started up the slanting floor of the hallway. Where was the cat? The hallway went on and on. Wait, said Jack. I want to see the book. He opened the Egypt book again. He held it below a torch on the wall. Then he showed the drawing of it inside the pyramid. The burial chamber is in the middle of the pyramid. See? Jack said. He pointed to the drawing. It should be straight ahead. Jack took the book. Jack took the book under his arm. Then he and Annie headed deeper into the pyramid. Soon the floor became flat. The air felt different, musty, and scale. Jack opened the book again. I think we're almost at the burial chamber. See the picture? The hallway slants up, then it gets flat. Then you come to the chamber. See, look. Ah! A strange cry shot through the pyramid. Jack dropped the Egypt book. Out the shadow flew a white figure. It swooshed toward them. A mummy! Jack thought. It's alive! Annie shouted. Chapter 4. Back from the dead. Jack pulled Annie down. The white figure moved swiftly past them, then disappeared into the shadows. A mummy, said Jack. Back from the dead! Forget it, stammered Jack. That's impossible. He picked up the Egypt book. What's this? Said Annie. He lifted something from the floor. Look, the mummy dropped this thing. It was a gold stick about a foot long. The dog's head was carved on the end. It looks like a scepter, said Jack. What's that? Asked Annie. It's the things that kings and queens carry, said Jack. It means they have power over the people. Come back, Mummy, Annie called. We found your scepter. Come back. We want to help you. Shush, said Jack. Are you nuts? But the mummy. That was no mummy, said Jack. It was a person, a real person. What kind of person would be inside a pyramid? Asked Annie. I don't know, said Jack. Maybe the book can help us. He flipped through the book. At last he found a person in the pyramid. He read, Tomb robber often stole the treasure buried with mummies. False passages were sometimes built to stop the robbers. Jack closed the book. Not a mummy, he said. Just a tomb robber. Yikes, a tomb robber? Said Annie. Yeah, a robber who steals stuff from tombs, said Jack. What if the robbers come back? Said Annie. We'd better leave. Right, said Jack. But first I want to write something down. He put the Egypt book into his pack. He pulled out his notebook and pencil. He started writing in his notebook. Tomb robber. Jack, said Annie. Just a second, said Jack. He kept writing. Tomb robber tried to steal. Jack, look, said Annie. Jack felt a whoosh of cold air. He looked up. A wave of terror shot through him. Another figure was moving swiftly toward them. It wasn't a tomb robber. It was a lady, a beautiful Egyptian lady. The lady wore flowers in her black hair, and a long white dress had many many pleats. Her gold jewelry glittered. Here, Jack, Annie whispered. Give her this. She handed him the gold scepter. The Egyptian lady stopped in front of him. Jack held out the scepter. His hand was trembling. He gasped. The scepter passed right through the lady's hand. She was made of air. Chapter 5. The Ghost Queen. A ghost, Annie whispered. Jack could only stare in horror. The ghost began to speak. She spoke in a hollow, echoing voice. I am Utepi, she said, Queen of the Nile. Have you come to help me? Jack still couldn't speak. Yes, said Annie. For 1,000 years, said the Ghost Queen, I have waited for help. Jack's heart was so pounding he thought he might faint. Someone must find my Book of the Dead, she said. I need to go on the next life. Why do you need the Book of the Dead? Asked Annie. She didn't sound scared at all. It will tell me the magic spells I will need to get past the underworld, said the Ghost Queen. The underworld? Said Annie. Before I journey on to the next life, I must pass the horrors of the underworld. What kinds of horrors? Annie asked. Poisonous snakes, said the Ghost Queen. Lakes of fire, monsters, demons. Oh, Annie stepped closer to Jack. My brother hid the Book of the Dead so tomb robbers will not steal it, said the Ghost Queen. Then he carved this secret message on the wall, telling me how to find it. She pointed to the wall. Where? Annie asked her. Here? She pointed at the wall. What do these tiny pictures mean? The Ghost Queen smiled sadly. Alas, my brother forgot my strange problem. I cannot see clearly that which is close to my eyes. I have not been to read this message for thousands of years. Well, that's not strange, said Annie. Jack has the same problem. That's why he wears glasses. The Ghost Queen stared at wondering Jack. Jack, lend her your glasses, said Annie. Jack took Fox's glasses off his nose. He held them out to the Ghost Queen. She backed away from him. I cannot wear your glasses, Jack, he said. As you can see, I am made of air. Oh, I forgot, said Annie. But perhaps you will describe the hieroglyph on the wall, said the Ghost Queen. Who? Said Annie. Hieroglyphs, said Jack, finally finding his voice. It's the ancient Egyptian way of writing. It's like writing with pictures. The Ghost Queen smiled at him. Thank you, Jack, she said. Jack smiled back at her. She put his glasses on. Then he stepped toward the wall and took a good long look. Oh, man, he whispered. Chapter 6. The Writing on the Wall. Jack and Annie squinted at the pyramid wall. A series of tiny pictures carved into the stone. There are 4 pictures here, Jack told the Ghost Queen. Describe them to me, Jack. One at a time, please, she said. Jack studied the first picture. Okay, he said. The first one is like this. He made a zigzag in the air with his finger. Like stairs? Asked the Ghost Queen. Yes, stairs, said Jack. Just like stairs. She nodded. That was easy enough, Jack thought. He studied the second picture. The second one has a long box on the bottom, he said. He drew it in the air. The Ghost Queen looked puzzled. But 3 things on top, like this, said Annie. She drew squiggly lines on the air. So the Ghost Queen still seemed puzzled. Like a hat, said Jack. Hat? said the Ghost Queen. No, more like a boat, said Annie. Boat? said the Ghost Queen. She sounded excited. Boat? Jack took another look at the wall. Yes, it could be a boat, he said. The Ghost Queen looked very happy. She smiled. Yes, of course, she said. Jack and Annie studied the next picture. The third thing is like a thing that holds flowers, said Annie. Or a thing that holds water, said Jack. Like a jug? Asked the Ghost Queen. Exactly, said Jack. Yes, a jug, said Annie. Jack and Annie studied the last picture. And the last one looks like a pole that droops, said Annie. Like a curved stick, said Jack, but one side is shorter than the other. The Ghost Queen looked puzzled again. Wait, said Jack. I'll draw it in my notebook, big so you can see it. Jack put down the scepter and got out his pencil. He drew the hieroglyph. A folded cloth, said the Ghost Queen. Really? Said Jack. Yes, that is the hieroglyph from a folded cloth, said Annie. Oh, okay, said Jack. He looked at the fourth hieroglyph again. He still couldn't see the folded cloth. Maybe it was like a towel hanging over the bathroom rod. So that's all of them, said Annie. She pointed at each picture. Stairs, boat, jug, folded cloth. Jack wrote in his notebook. Stairs, boat, jug, cloth. Chapter 7. The Scroll. Jack put the sculpture and his notebook and pencil into his pack. The Ghost Queen seemed so kind and gentle. He wasn't afraid of her at all anymore. Jack and Annie followed her to peer into the pyramid. Finally, they came into some stairs. The stairs, said Jack and Annie together. The Ghost Queen floated up stairs. Jack and Annie followed. The Ghost Queen floated right through a wooden door. Jack and Annie pushed on the door. It opened slowly. They stamped into a cold, drafty room. The Ghost Queen was nowhere in sight. Dim torchlight lit the huge room. It had a very high ceiling. On one side, it was a pile of tables, chairs, and musical instruments. On the other side of the room was a small wooden boat. The boat, said Jack. What's doing inside Queen Hotepi's pyramid? Asked Annie. Maybe it's supposed to carry her to the next life, said Jack. Jack and Annie went over to the boat. They looked inside it. The boat was filled with many things. Gold plates, gold cups, gold jewel goblets, wooden basket, jewelry with blue stones, and a small wooden statue. Look, said Jack. He reached into the boat and lifted the clay jug. Something is in here. What is it? Asked Annie. Jack looked inside the jug. It feels like a big napkin, he said. The folded cloth, said Annie. Jack reached into the jug and pulled out the folded cloth. It was wrapped around an ancient-looking scroll. Jack slowly unrolled the scroll. It was covered with wonderful hieroglyphs. The Book of the Dead, whispered Annie. We found it. Oh man, Jack traced his finger over the scroll. It felt like very old paper. Queen Hotepi, called Annie. We have it. We found your Book of the Dead. Silence. Queen Hotepi. A door on the other side of the chamber creaked open. Maybe she isn't there, said Annie. Jack's heart was pounding. Cold air was coming through the open doorway. Come on, said Annie. Wait. No, said Annie. She waited thousands of years for her book. Don't make her wait any more. Jack put her ancient scroll into his backpack. Then he and Annie slowly started to cross the drafty room. They came to the open door. Annie went through it first. Hurry, Jack, she said. Jack stomped into the other room. It was nearby bar, except for the long golden box. The box was open. It was covered with the floor. Queen Utepi, called Annie. Silence. We found it, said Annie. Your Book of the Dead. There was still no sign of the ghost queen. The golden box glowed. Jack could bravely breathe. Let's leave the scroll on the floor and go, he said. No, I think we shall leave it in there, said Annie. She pointed to a gold box. No, said Jack. Don't be afraid, said Annie. Come on. Annie took Jack by his arm. They walked together across the room to the glowing gold box. They stand in front of the box and peeked inside. Chapter 8. The Mummy. A real mummy, Jack thought. Bandages were still wrapped around the fallen away from the face. It was Hutepi, Queen of the Nile. Hutepi's mummy wasn't beautiful. It had broken teeth, little winked ears, and a squashed nose. Its fin felt like winter. Its eyes were hollow skulls. The rotting bandages on the mummy's body were coming off. Jack could see bones. Oh, gross, said Annie. Let's go. No, said Jack. It's interesting. Forget it, said Annie. He started out of the room. Wait, Annie. Come on, Jack, hurry, cried Annie. She was standing by the door. Jack pulled out the Egypt book and flipped to a picture of a mummy. He read aloud. Ancient Egyptians tried to protect the body so it would last forever. First, it was dried out of salt. Stop, said Annie. Listen, said Jack. He kept reading. Next, it was covered with oil. Then it was wrapped tightly in bandages. The brain was removed by... Yuck, stop, cried Annie. Goodbye. She dashed out of the room. Annie, called Jack, we have to give her the Book of the Dead. But Annie was gone. Jack reached into his pocket. He pulled out the scroll and a scepter. He put them next to the mummy's skull. Was it just his imagination, or a deep sigh seemed to shudder through the room? Did the mummy's face grow calmer? Jack held his breath as he break out of the mummy's room. He hurled through the boat room and headed down the stairs. At the bottom of the stairs, Jack had his own sigh, a sigh of relief. He looked down as always. It was empty. Hey, Annie, where are you? He said. No answer. Where in the world was Annie? Jack started down the hallway. Annie, he called. Had she run out of the pyramid? Was she already outside? Annie! Help, Jack! Came a cry. The voice sounded far away. It was Annie. Where was she? Help, Jack! Annie! Jack started to run around the shadowy hallway. Help, Jack! Her cry seemed fainter. Jack stopped. He was running away from her voice. Annie! He called. He went back towards the burial chambers. Jack! Her voice was louder. Jack! Jack climbed the stairs. He went back into the boat room. He looked around the furniture, the musical instruments, and the boat. Then he sighed. There was another door. It was right next to the door he had just come through. The other door was open. Jack dashed through it. He found himself at the top of some stairs. They were just like the stairs outside of the other door. He went down the stairs into a hallway. It was lit by torches on the wall. It was just like the other hallway. Annie, he called. Jack! Annie! Jack! Annie was running through the hallway towards him. She crashed into him. I was lost, she cried. I think this one is the one of the false passage built to fool the tomb robbers, said Jack. A false passage? Said Annie, painting. Yeah, it looks just like the other hallway, said Jack. We have to go back into the boat room and out the right door. Just then they heard a cracking noise. Jack and Annie turned around. They looked upstairs. They watched in horror as the door slowly creaked shut. A deep sound rumbled in the distance, and all the torches went out. Chapter 9. Follow the leader. It was pitch dark. What happened? Asked Annie. I don't know. Something weird, said Jack. We have to get out of here fast. Push against the door. Good idea, said Annie in a small voice. They felt they were like a darkness through the top of the stairs. Don't worry. Everything is going to be okay, said Jack. He was trying to stay calm. Of course, said Annie. They leaned against the wooden door and pushed. It wouldn't budge. They pushed harder. It was no use. Jack took a deep breath. It was getting harder to breathe and harder to stay calm. What can we do? Asked Annie. Just rest a minute, said Jack, panting. His heart was pounding as he tried to see through the darkness. Maybe we should start down the hall, Annie said. Maybe we'll eventually come to an exit? Jack wasn't sure about that, but they had no choice. Okay, come on, he said. Feel the wall. Jack felt the stone wall as he climbed slowly downstairs. Annie followed. Jack started down the dark hallway. It was impossible to see anything, but he kept going, taking one step at a time, moving his hands along the wall. Jack went around a corner. He went around another corner. He came to some stairs. He climbed up. Annie followed. There was a door. Jack pushed against it. Annie pushed too. This door wouldn't budge either. Or was it the same door? Annie and Jack stopped pushing. It was no use. They were trapped. Annie and Jack had in the dark. She squeezed it. They stood together at the top of the stairs and listening to the silence. Meow. Aw, man, Jack whispered. He is back, said Annie. Meow. Follow him, cried Jack. He's going away from us. Jack and Annie started down the dark hallway, following the cat's meow. Hands against the wall, they rumbled through the darkness. Meow. Jack and Annie kept following the sound. All the way through the windowing hallway. They went around one corner, then another, and another. Finally, they saw a light at the out of the tunnel. They rushed forward at the bright sunlight. Yay! Annie shouted. But Jack was thinking. Annie, he said, how do we get out of the false passage? The cat, said Annie. But how did the cat do it? Asked Jack. Magic, said Annie. Jack followed. But look, said Annie. She pointed. The cat was bounding away over the sand. Thank you, called Annie. Thanks, Jack shouted at the cat. The cat's black tail waved. Then the cat disappeared into the shining waves of the heat. Jack looked towards the palm trees. The magic tree sat like the bird's nest of the top of the one. Time to go home, Jack said. Jack and Annie sat up the palm trees. It was a long, hot walk. At last, Annie grabbed the rope ladder. Jack followed. Once they were inside the treehouse, Jack reached for the book about Pennsylvania. Suddenly, he heard a rumbling sound. It was the same sound he had heard in the pyramid. Look, Annie said, pointing out of the window. Jack looked. A boat was beside the pyramid. It was gliding over the sand like a boat sailing over the sea. Then the boat floated away to the distance. Was it a mirage or the ghost queen finally hot over the way to their next life? Home, Jack, whispered Annie. Jack opened the Pennsylvania book. He pointed to the picture of Rock Creek. I wish we could go home, he said. The wind began to blow. The treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. Chapter 10. Another clue. Late morning sunlight shone through the treehouse window. Shadows distanced over the walls and ceiling. Jack took a deep breath. The treehouse was back in the Frog Creek woods. I wonder what Mom's making for lunch, said Annie. She was looking out of the window. Jack smiled. Lunch, Mom, home. It all sounded so real, so calm and safe. I hope it's peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, he said. Boy, this place is a mess, said Annie. We'd better make it neater in case Em comes back. Jack had almost forgot about Em. Will we ever meet Em? Jack wondered. The person who seems to own all these books in the treehouse? Let's put the Egypt book back on the bottom of the pile, said Annie. Good idea, said Jack. He needed a rest before he visited any more ancient tombs. Let's put the dinosaur book on top of the Egypt book, said Annie. Yeah, good, said Jack. He needed a long rest before he visited another Tyrannosaurus Rex. The castle book can go over the very top of the pile, said Annie. Jack nodded and smiled. He liked things about the knights on the cover of the castle book. He felt as the knight was his friend. Jack, said Annie. Look! She was pointing at the wooden floor. What is it? He asked. You have to see for yourself. Jack walked to Annie and looked at the floor. He didn't see anything. Turn your head a little, said Annie. You have to catch the light just right. Jack tipped his head to one side. Something was shining on the floor. He tipped his head a bit more. It came into furious. It was the letter M. It shined in the sunlight. It absolutely proved the treehouse began to end. There were no doubt about it. Jack touched M with his finger. The skins tangled. The leaves trembled. The wind picked up. Let's go home now, Jack said. Jack grabbed his backpack. Then he and Annie climbed down the ladder. As they stood out the ground below the treehouse, they heard a sound into the bushes. Who's there? he called. The woods grew still. I'm going to bring the medallion back soon, said Jack loudly. And the bookmark too. Both of them tomorrow. Who are you talking to? Asked Annie. I feel Em is nearby, Jack whispered. Annie's eyes grew wide. Should we look for Em? But just then their mom's voice came from the distance. Jack! Annie! Jack and Annie looked around the tree. Then they looked at each other. Tomorrow, they said together. They took off, running out of the woods. They ran to the street, then ran across their yard. They ran into their house. They ran into their kitchen. They ran right into their mom. She was making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Thanks for enjoying this video and please subscribe to our channel. Bye!